I just heard from one of our people I invited that they couldn't make it after all tonight due to snow problems with husband needing to stay at work. And she asked kids to take care of, so she'll join next. But this might be of value to people like that to be able to see later on.
Yeah, great. Thank you for reminding me. All right, so welcome to Showing Up for Racial Justice, Cincinnati. This is our general meeting, a monthly general meeting that we have. Waiting room, somebody? And kind of like to just slow ourselves down. We want to be in a reflective way of thinking. And Rachel's going to kind of just lead us in a brief square breathing to give us a chance to kind of get centered on what our job is tonight.
Hi, it's nice to meet you guys, and thanks for joining us. And I'm just gonna lead you guys in a grounding exercise to feel more present and in this space is square breathing. So we're just going to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, out for 4, and then rest for 4. So we're gonna just get comfortable and ready, and then we're gonna breathe in for 4, hold, and down. Just first, gonna breathe in, hold, out, let's do one more. Breathe in, hold, and out. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. So Showing Up for Racial Justice is an organization primarily of white people, but is multiracial also, of calling white people into the work of dismantling white supremacy and uplifting racial justice. It's a culture of learning and education and active support of uplifting Black-led organizations and voices. It's inclusive. It's not confidential. Obviously, we're recording this, but the idea here is that people are going to bring their best selves to the conversation and speak honestly and speak truth of their own experiences. Rachel's going to lead us on a brief icebreaker, maybe in the chat.
Hi, and so now we're just going to be going around and just introduce yourself, your pronouns, where you're from, and then our icebreaker is going to be, what would be your ideal breakfast?
Would be my ideal what?
Breakfast include?
Oh, breakfast.
Yeah, it's a fun one. So my name's Rachel. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm from Loveland, and currently I'm working at UC as a therapist for this year. And my ideal breakfast definitely include some sausage links and, I don't know, just basic egg toast. And I'll call on Nadine to go next since she likes breakfast.
Yes, I'm Nadine Allen, retired judge. I don't know what the I didn't understand what the pronoun thing is. What is that?
Yeah, that's just so pronouns would just be she, hers, he, him, or they, them,
Oh.
whatever you identify as.
Okay, she, her. And my ideal breakfast would be some French toast with honey and pecans on them.
And you can identify somebody else to call it?
I do that?
Mm-hmm. Pick somebody.
Oh,
They're willing.
I'm gonna call on Dan Hoffheimer.
I'm so glad you did, Judge. I can't tell you how pleased I am to see you.
That's what I'm calling on you.
And
Yes,
and
it's
remind
exciting.
it, you're way too young to be retired. Justice.
She's not very retired. She's been busy.
Right. Sort of.
Ideal breakfast for me would be geta, well done, 2 poached eggs, rye toast with butter, and V8, glass of V8 with a lot of lemon.
Mm.
Want to pass it on? Pick somebody?
Okay. How about Ernie McAdams?
Hi, my name is Ernest McAdams. I'm a he, him. I'm from Cincinnati, although I was born in North Carolina. I'm a retired prosecutor for the city of Cincinnati, but I started my career as a public defender working with Nadine Allen. And my ideal breakfast would be pancakes, bacon, orange juice, and coffee.
You want to pass it on?
I will pass it on to Iris.
I said I couldn't stand you, Ernest McAdams, passing it on. Hey, Reverend Pierce, good to see you. My name is Iris Rowley. Originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a girl. And my ideal breakfast would include some avocado toast with some ginger tea and fresh fruit and a little yogurt.
Mm.
Now I'll pass my mic on to Reverend Pierce since he just joined us and I haven't heard his voice in a while.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nelson Pierce, he, him pronouns. And my favorite, my ideal breakfast, as long as it has coffee, I'm okay. I am not really complicated. Just make sure that the coffee is there. And if it's good coffee, then you will be my friend for life.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have to be hot?
Yeah, it has to be. No, I don't do the iced coffee. No,
Just
please. Yeah. I'm gonna call on Dante Johnson.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dante Johnson. My pronouns are he and him. I'm from Cincinnati. I grew up in Avondale. And my ideal breakfast, I like to keep it simple, is toast, egg whites, turkey bacon, and some spring water. So nice and healthy. So it's my turn to pass the mic. Let me find someone. How about Jeremy Yap? Did I pronounce your last name right?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm Jeremy Yap, and my pronouns are he, him, and I'm in the Clifton area. Let's see, my ideal breakfast. Honestly, it really depends on my mood, but I guess the two constants would probably be it's usually going to involve some kind of good tea, and it's usually going to involve some kind of fruit. So I'd say those two are non-negotiable. Everything else is going to vary depending on my mood, honestly.
Pass it on.
Yeah, you're on mute, Jeremy. You have to pass.
Oh, let's see. Who hasn't gone yet?
Carol.
Has Carol? Yeah, let's pass it on to Carol.
All right, I put mine in the chat, but
You started it.
I don't mind. I'm Carol Wommeldorf. Carol has an E on the end. Pronouns are she, her, and I've been active with SURJ Cincinnati, voter engagement, and UU Justice Ohio. And I'm an engineer and educator. And my favorite breakfast probably be eggs Benedict. But let's switch the ham out for Geta. Crispy, like you said, crispy. And I'll grab Celeste. Would you like to? I saw you in the chat, but go ahead and let other folks.
Celeste Treece, originally from Cleveland, here in Cincinnati. I would say my favorite breakfast includes anything with waffles or baked pastries. And I don't know who hasn't. Right now, my favorite is Little Dutch Bakery in Mount Healthy.
They are the bomb.
I don't know who hasn't gone. Benjamin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Sherritt. Pronouns are he, him. I'm originally from Indiana, but I've lived here for 2 years, and my ideal breakfast would be biscuits and gravy.
Yeah. Ben, you want to tap someone?
You're muted, Ben. You want to pass it on to somebody?
I'm sorry, I'm on my phone. I'm on my phone. It's hard to see the people. Let me see.
Let's pass to Mika, who just said in chat.
Hey, thank you. Good evening, Mika Owens, a member of this community. I live in Avondale. Let's see, she, her. I am also a candidate for city council, but most importantly here as a member of this community. Very important topic. And my ideal breakfast is a protein, so boiled eggs, kale, and smoked salmon.
You want to tap somebody, Mika?
All right, let's see. Can I choose Mr. McAdams?
He's already gone.
Oh, he's already gone. Okay, sorry. Scrolling through.
The speaker hasn't said anything, and it keeps telling everybody what to do.
Who hasn't?
Daniel.
Well, I think I've been voluntold by the judge. So where are you, Daniel? Let's go with Daniel.
Well, if you mean me, I've already gone.
Oh, all right.
How about David?
Was that? Okay.
I don't think David is gone.
All right, David.
David will go. David doesn't have bandwidth because I'm homeless right now, waiting on my house to finish being complete, if that matters. But I identify as he, him, and I'm a media consultant in Cincinnati. And my ideal breakfast is 2 strips of crispy turkey bacon, a red delicious apple, and a seedless grape, either red or green. And I will pass it to, let me see if I can pull up everybody.
Molly, Stephen, or Elizabeth, or Karen.
Elizabeth Dean.
Hey everybody, I'm Elizabeth Dean. I am originally, she, her are my pronouns. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. Currently live in Georgetown, Ohio, which is about 50 miles east of the city. I'm an event planner, and my ideal breakfast would be coffee, waffles, and raspberries with whipped cream. And I will pass it off to, who has not gone yet? Let's see.
Karen and Molly and Stephen.
Let's pass it to Molly.
Hi Hi, everyone. My name is Molly, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm calling into Cincinnati because I recently got a position working virtually in Cincinnati through UCAN Ohio, Universal Healthcare Action Network. And I connected with SURJ Cincinnati during your last November election and met Carol working to get out the vote for your sheriff's race. I'm happy to be here and just wanted to connect with folks in Cincinnati, and one of the things we're looking for is folks who have experiences with Medicaid and healthcare access issues, racism in hospitals, and to hear your stories so that we can advocate for changes in policy. So if that speaks to you, definitely reach out to me. But I'm also here just to support this effort. My ideal breakfast is, I think Iris's breakfast sounded awesome. But sprouted grains, seeds, fruits, but I'm also very open to eggs and bacon. Just get the coffee. I totally agree with that. And I'm gonna pass Celeste. Was that somebody who, no, I think she went. I don't know, sorry, Carol.
Stephen hasn't gone.
Stephen.
Hi, I'm Stephen Fleming. I grew up in the Northern Kentucky area, right across the river. I'm back in Cincinnati now since July. Before that, I was living in the Boston area for a little bit. I use he, him pronouns. Let's see, my ideal breakfast would probably just be a plate full of bacon. Is there anybody else who hasn't gone yet?
Karen, I think.
And Ray Jane, maybe? I don't know.
This is Karen, retired Episcopal clergy. I went to high school in North College Hill, then moved to the Ohio State University, back in town. My pronouns are she, her. I have been active in a lot of the social justice areas in the city because I love Cincinnati. And my favorite, I have several options for my breakfast. I often eat the, there's a 10 grain cereal type of thing, red mill 10 grain cereal, which I like a lot. I love oatmeal. But lately I've been having a craving for a waffle. So I'm craving a waffle with some syrup and that kind of thing. And I don't mind having bacon. That would be lovely, all the bacon lovers. So that's me. Who hasn't gone yet?
Ray Jane.
Ray Jean. I invite you.
Ray Jane Arujo. I live in Westchester. I'm part of the steering committee for SURJ. And my favorite breakfast is a Western omelet, hot tea, and a piece of toast.
And we're going to wrap around to Claire. And I think we've gotten everybody else.
Well, I think David Whitehead was on here. I saw his name pop up. David's still here?
Yeah, he's just not on the video.
Okay. Well, you haven't said anything.
I thought I called on David.
Yeah,
I did go, Judge Allen.
Yeah, he went.
Oh, well, maybe I didn't know. Okay, I didn't see your face. All right. What about you, sir, in the blue shirt? I can't see very well. It's about a quarter inch, and I can't tell who anybody is right now. My screen's a quarter inch, and I know we know each other.
Yeah, I'm Claire Hostetler, and I'm a fairly new member of the steering committee of SURJ. I grew up in Northern Indiana, and I've been living in Cincinnati for 5 years now. I work as a hospice chaplain And I've been a social justice activist for many, many years. And I'm also particularly concerned about racism in healthcare and looking at all of the similar kinds of issues as what I'm trying to remember your name, who
Molly.
Molly Nagan articulated. Anyway, I think we've introduced everybody. Shall I go ahead and introduce our two speakers?
That sounds, yeah, I was going to do a brief, just a quick thing on SURJ.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
We talked about values of conversation, mutual interest in centering class, of course, race. Make mistakes, keep going. Accountability through collective action, and there's lots of work for everybody. And SURJ, there's a SURJ Ohio group, we're SURJ Cincinnati. There's Allies group, it's SURJ in Dayton. There's also Columbus, and I think there's a couple ones around Columbus and further north. And then of course there's the national chapter, showing up for racialjustice.org, SURJ Ohio. There's a Facebook group for SURJ Ohio, and we now actually have a SURJ Cincinnati webpage, which is we're just kicking off. And we talked about calling people in. And this is sort of the structure, which is still shaping. So if you're interested in being more active in SURJ going forward, please let us know. You can email us at surjcincinnati@gmail.com, and somebody could put that in the chat. That'd be great. And so this is, we had a study group on Cincinnati justice. We were following a lot of the work that both Reverend Pierce and Iris were doing, looking at both the protests this past summer, but also some of the conversations that Black United Front and Leaders of the Free World were hosting, talking about with the OJPC and Women's City Club and just a lot of things. And Judge Allen lifted up this document to me, the Ohio Racial Fairness document that was written in 1999, and she's mentioned it to me 2 or 3 times, and I'm so glad we're finally getting to really dig into it as a community, so, or at least get started digging into it as a community. And I'm going to hand it to Claire to introduce our speakers.
Yes, well, I'm really delighted that Daniel and Ernest are available tonight. I first heard about Daniel by looking at the list of who all was on the original commission from 1999 and saw his name as a local Cincinnati person, attorney involved in that. And so I asked my really good friend, Ed Diller, who's an attorney, if he knew him. And he said, sure, I used to work with him. And so he got us connected. And we've talked a couple of times on the phone in preparation for tonight. And I'm really looking forward to the stimulus of our discussion through these two gentlemen. Then I saw Ernest McAdams' name on the list of folks who, the attorneys who worked on the follow-up in 2002, which was the task force for implementing the recommendations in that original document. And our discussions have so far as a committee and just in the initial conversations, highlight the fact that much of this work has not been implemented yet, although some of it has. We'd like to hear from you two gentlemen, some thoughts about what you think is the best way to go about this, and also how folks like us can continue to be involved in moving things forward. So if you could each take, 5 or 10 minutes of reflection and stimulate some discussion, we'll look forward to engaging with you in that the rest of this hour. So I'm not sure which of you would like to go first. Maybe I'll just call on Daniel to go first, and we'll see where this goes. So welcome.
Thank you, Claire. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Good. I was really pleased to get Claire's call about this, but it required I pull down a very dusty report off the shelf, and when I saw that it was 20 years old, it really made me feel, well, what's happened in the last 20 years? And I had to spend a little time just looking through the report and specifically at the recommendations, and I was reminded Ernie certainly will address this, was reminded that when we completed our report, it contains a number of very specific recommendations that when we submitted our report, we expected they would be implemented. And when we then heard that there was another commission appointed to put the recommendations of the first report into effect, I have to say that I know from conversations 20 years ago, and maybe once or twice since when I bumped into fellow commissioners, feeling a little bit, more than a little bit disappointed. Let me put a little context on this. I think the origins of the commission, and this is really more my stretching my memory and expressing my opinion about this as opposed to anything specifically in the report. I think the commission came about as a result of both some political pressures on the Supreme Court of Ohio to, as the parent organization, if you will, for the entire justice system in our state, to undertake some actions to solve very specific de facto racism in the justice system. And when I say the justice system, that's all aspects. That's not just the courts, it's policing, it's arresting, it's sentencing, it's the organization of the bar and the rules of professional conduct that lawyers and judges are both held to. It's a pretty broad umbrella. And I think some sense on the part of the public generally, and some of this came from the bar, that the court needed to take some action and basically from its position issue some very specific direction to lower courts and through the courts to the prosecuting attorneys' offices and the public defenders' offices and to the bar, since the Supreme Court regulates the entire bar. I'm basically going to order the bar what it wants the bar to do. But I also think it came from, at that time, Chief Justice Tom Moyer, who was a very good intentioned and liberal-minded and good person. And he really knew that there were problems with the justice system that I think he was very frustrated with, that the justice system tends to be rather conservative and wants to keep things the way they are, and it operates according to fixed procedures that are difficult to change. And I think he really wanted to shake it up. And so he appointed a commission, and I can't really tell you why I was appointed to it, but it's a good mixture of people from all around the state of Ohio. I think the chief and probably Judge Ron Adrian, who was the other co-chair of the commission, probably gave a lot of thought to the types of lawyers and other members of the commission, and it ended up with a pretty good cross section, I think. Although a lot of the names on there I had never known before, and I haven't come across since. We did come together as a commission. I think we worked very well at our meetings, and there were quite a number of them, and phone calls. I think we got along very well. We broke down into subcommittees, as you can imagine, and if you look through the report, if you look at each chapter, basically ended up being a subcommittee of the overall commission. So each of us worked on one particular aspect, and then we would draft things and come together and revise each other's drafts until we got finally down to a final report. But I think it was motivated both by political pressure up from around the community of Ohio and down from Chief Justice Moyer. After we issued the report, we thought that the recommendations in the report were pretty specific. And I'm not going to read them all to you, but each chapter in here, at the end of each chapter, has some very specific recommendations, which we thought would have been able to be executed by the particular body charged with doing so. Some of them are requiring the bar to do some things. Some of them are requiring the Supreme Court to make some rule changes. Some of them are requiring changes in the prosecuting attorney's offices, changes in the way the juries are selected, changes in sentencing, all the different aspects of the justice system. Well, I shouldn't say all. It was discrete in the sense that we could only take so much on. And we looked at reports that were issued by around the country by other commissions similar to ours, and we realized some of them had tried to be too broad and some of them were too narrow, and we tried to find a middle ground that was ambitious, but not, we felt, not going to be impossible. And so we came out with all these specific recommendations, and we kind of thought this was going to be a really successful outcome, and that our recommendations were going to be carried out. And I guess we were a little bit Pollyanna-ish and expecting more success than we felt we really had, and especially when we saw that another commission was appointed to look at what we had done and try to carry it out. I know a number of us on the commission felt that the appointment of and Ernie will speak to this, the appointment of the commission to carry out the report was in part coming from wherever it came from, other justices on the Supreme Court or other political pressures to slow down the process of change that our report recommended. And as I look back on our recommendations in light of the 20 years that have passed, and especially in light of what's happened in the last couple of years with Black Lives Matter and the tenor of attitude of Donald Trump towards a lot of aspects of our legal system and our culture and our courts and our politics, it looks much more Pollyanna-ish from this point of view than it did at the time. So I think we were unduly optimistic. However, I think most of us on the commission, and I'm speaking certainly from the 4, 5, or 6, or 7, or 8 people on the commission that I really got to be good friends with, and in some cases I'm still pretty close to, although I don't see them as often as I'd like to. Once in a while I see some of them at state bar meetings. I think that we feel that the recommendations that we made were directed at some core issues that are deficits in our society as a result of structural and institutional racism that is very, very difficult to combat by simply making specific recommendations for change. That is, the reasons why there are the problems that we tried to assault with our recommendations are so ingrained in our culture that, with complete honesty, some of the people, conservative people that we would have talked to, for example, in complete good faith, have absolutely no idea why there's anything wrong with the way things are. And they probably feel that way today. And that's just a function of structural and inherent racism throughout our society, which 20 years ago, I just don't think even those of us who I think we think of ourselves as being pretty liberal minded, I certainly consider myself to be pretty far to the left. We didn't realize how unbelievably difficult it is to deal with these issues. And I suppose that's why the second commission was appointed, because everything looked too radical in a way. And this is just my opinion, looked too radical, and there was pushback. So with that, of course, I'll be happy to stay on for discussion and questions, but with that, maybe turn it over to Ernie at this point. And I'm really curious to hear what you have to say, Ernie, and then maybe you and I can kind of come together around some understanding of where we are now as a result of these two reports.
Thanks, Dan. You get invited to be on one of these task forces, and you're excited, but our initial reaction was the same as yours. Why are you doing this now? And you've already got a report that's a whole lot of pages long. What do you really want us to do? You've got what you need to do. So we were a little surprised that they were asking us to do this, and we were a little surprised, and we kind of felt like you did, that this was a way to pass the buck and say, well, give them something to do, and they'll come back and they'll make recommendations, and maybe it'll blow over. But of course, we were Pollyannish also, and we really felt that the things we came up with would be implemented because this was the implementation task force. And we felt that because this was the implementation task force that we would be listened to. And you know, at the time, I was naive enough to believe that at least one or two of these things would actually happen. One of the things that perhaps the other people on the meeting don't understand about the Ohio Supreme Court is that it changes from time to time due to elections. So who your chief justice is changes, the other judges change, and their philosophies change. And one of the things that has happened over the last 20 years is I think it's become more conservative, and then it's become a little bit back to the left. Things have changed a lot with the Ohio Supreme Court, but the problems that we were asked to deal with have not. And I was very disappointed when we issued this report, the implementation task force, which the implementation report, which actually set out what the Ohio Supreme Court needed to do to make these things happen. And then you find out they're not going to do anything. And then you look at it 20 years later and you realize we're still talking about some of these things and nothing has been done. And I'm old enough to remember when continuing legal education was not mandatory for lawyers. And then it became mandatory. And then because of some other little scandals, they really got into the ethical things and attorney conduct things that lawyers had to complete those specific hours every 2 years. But none of that existed in 2000 and 2002. And one of the things that was most important to me was that we include this training about racial sensitivity as a requirement in CLEs. And the group agreed that is what was in our report, and that has never happened. And that's been a huge disappointment to me.
Hello.
I've seen some training related to that lately, but it seems to be more a reaction to what happened last year as opposed to a reaction to our report. But yes, Dan, we were just like you. We were very Pollyannish. We really thought this was going to do something and it was going to change some things. As you look at our report, you see that some things we said, well, we'll just continue doing what we've been doing. But the attitudes that needed to be changed were the things that we were hoping would really be pushed, that the Ohio Supreme Court has not pushed.
If I could comment on that, it's interesting. I'm not surprised at anything you said, but
Daniel, I want to shift the format just a little bit here, because I've invited Judge Allen as well as Celeste and Pastor Nelson to speak, to be part of this conversation, to be part of this circle of the conversation, and so I hope we could open it up that way. And it's not just those folks, also Iris and every folks. So go ahead. Nadine's got a burning point here.
Yes, greetings, everyone. I'm going to jump right in. And that is that when this report came out, I was so excited, like you, Dan and Ernie, that I went immediately onto the radio, onto Lincoln Ware show, telling everybody we've got this great report, and it identifies that there are racial disparities throughout the legal system in the state of Ohio, and it has recommendations, and we're going to start working on those recommendations. I can tell you that two of them that are in effect, one of them is that I was selected as one of the three instructors for the Ohio Supreme Court for orientation to do instruction with new judges who are coming onto the bench about racial justice issues. And of course, it was watered down, as Dan and Ernie mentioned. It was supposed to be for all judges, but there was such a kickback about making all the judges participate in those kind of sessions that we ended up dealing with just the new judges. And that was starting in about 2002 or 3 or 4. So I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And to me, when I look at this report and it says that we have racial disparities, and it also implies that we have a duty as attorneys, especially as judges, to eliminate them. So to me, that has been what I call my secular Bible, is this report. And my blueprint is the Ohio Judicial Code. And in there, it says that judges cannot engage in any type of discrimination, and that is a grievance. So to me, judges who act like they're blind to the fact that they're looking at arraignment, for example, and you see 300 people, 250 of them are Black and 50 are white, and that's because you believe you believe Black people commit more crime. That's a fallacy right then and there. And so I enjoyed being able to teach and make these presentations to the new judges. Even if they haven't changed all that much, they've been told, and they ought to know that they've been a little bit too blind. So to me, I have a duty to, I felt as a judge, I had a duty to eliminate racial and every other kind of injustice. So I used it as the impetus to, and Ernie knows this, that I was constantly sometimes at odds with the prosecutor's office or the police, because I wanted us to do things like, which we eventually did do, to delete and purge old ancient warrants, 34,000 of them. And matter of fact, it should be happening every year. That we should have, expungement should be free, and Ernie worked on that, so that people who are eligible to have their records expunged don't have to pay the $50 filing fee. Well, you don't have that if you're low income and unemployed. So that got implemented. And I think there were several other programs that I worked on, like expanding alcohol and drug treatment. And then I have some other things in the back of my mind still to work on. And that was my impetus. And I used this report. So it was very helpful to me. I do know right now the Supreme Court has a commission now, a sentencing commission. And we are looking at the variety of sentences for each type of case, so that people who are similarly situated should be receiving the same range of sentence. It shouldn't be 6 months for somebody in one area and 5 years for somebody else. So the Supreme Court is trying to take a stab at that. So the one thing that was implemented, you fellas, is that at least new judges receive racial justice and fairness type of classes. And now I think all attorneys are getting some of that as part of their continuing legal education.
Is that
So
in
I'll
Hamilton County,
stop
or is
right
that
there.
across the state?
Across the state of Ohio. So the new judges are receiving it, but it's, it can be kind of watered down because there's a lot of resistance. I'm going to bring up something. One of the things I presented one year was giving the history of policing, and the fact that when slavery was abolished, not only were the slaves unemployed, but so were the overseers. And one of the things that followed was the creation of these patrols, police patrols. And so the overseers became the officers. And those officers led to what is now our professional police departments. And the reaction was some of the judges who are in rural areas got very offended by me making that type of comment, but I stood by it because it's true. And it still pervades a lot of the problems we're having now. When we look at the history, officers, or whatever the overseers were, they were the ones that rounded people up to be lynched or whatever it was going on. That's still a problem. So I'm going to stop right there because I might be getting carried away.
All right. And if folks want to, Pastor Nelson, Pastor Pierce, and Celeste, if you want to jump in, please do. Or if other folks want to raise their hand, you can use the reactions and raise a hand to kind of grab my attention. That way it works at the bottom on your screen. But somebody else.
Well, while they're doing that, I want to thank both Daniel and Ernie because I appreciate this whole group, because if we do not have people from all walks of life involved in the process of eliminating discrimination, then we aren't going to get anywhere. And you have the right souls and the right attitude, and I love you for it. Thank you.
I can just say, from an advocacy standpoint, it's great to hear about the foundation of this, but the only way we'll be able to address these disparities is for the sentencing data to be public. And so one thing we've pushed, particularly with the flip of our Hamilton County Courthouse, is for all of those judges to opt into a program that makes their pretrial and sentencing data public, so that we can see what those disparities are each
Yes.
year and make better informed decisions as voters. And I think that a lot of the judges on the campaign trail said they will be open to that. And then there was also an article recently with NPR with Judge Pierre from Court of Appeals and a Supreme Court justice talking about how a spreadsheet could change the course of how we look at our criminal justice system. So I think that the data is so much
Right.
needed for us to address all these disparities to move forward.
And I think that's why there is a commission that's been formed to actually pay attention to what judges are doing. And that requires that judges have to be identified. And I favor that. I think there's an effort. Part of the Ohio Supreme Court report talked about the jury selection. And I think the incoming judges have indicated that they will add people with driver's licenses, because right now it's just based on voter rolls, which is very narrow. And the court has wide discretion to add other sources. And one of them is motor driver's license situations, to bring those individuals in, to increase the voter poll and to have more diversity.
Thank you both. Mika, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so I just had a question in regards to the further implementation of these recommendations. And so with Supreme Court, with Justice O'Connor, who seems very amenable to, one, she had the task force on bail reform, and is a proponent of some of these things like the help center, which gets to equity, issues within the court system. So, and in terms of the continuity of these recommendations, and it matters who's on the bench, is this an opportunity for her to put her seal on this? And then the other part is, how do we build in that accountability mechanism? Because to Celeste's point, absolutely data is important, but it's only as good as it being administered and folks being accountable to that within the day-to-day operations of the court. And so, where, and that's why this commission is so important. And so where do we see that accountability piece being built in, or the opportunity for it?
Well, to me, if there are judges who are sentencing people and it shows that their sentences is very disparate when it comes to, even if it comes to low income people compared to folks with wealth, or Black folks compared to white or some other group, that sounds like it's the beginning of a disciplinary action, and that there is something in the judicial code about discrimination, and a judge can face disciplinary action for engaging in racial improprieties. And there are cases of that already in our House Supreme Court. So the public needs to know that. And I think judges ought to understand. I always felt like, actually, it's very, our behavior is something that the public has a right to speak about it and to be involved in it if we're doing something improper. Right, Dan? I see you sitting there.
Yes, I think it's implicit in, certainly in your comments, Judge, but in the other comments as well, that this is inherently a political issue. And we do have an elective judiciary. So the voters of Ohio do have the power to turn judges out if they don't like what they're doing. But they won't, if they don't have the information, if they don't have the statistics, if they don't have the data, they're not going to know. We know how, people, when they go down the ballots, stop voting so that the number of votes that judges get is a lot less, because people don't think they know how to vote for judges. And it behooves our whole society, our political parties, the bar, to get that information out to the voters so that they can make informed decisions. But it's also political in the sense that, and Ernie touched on this, that the Supreme Court has changed over the last 20 years. One of the things that happened that I think really slowed down both of our reports was that Chief Justice Moyer died really prematurely. So
Yeah.
you can speculate what would have happened had he lived. But even if he had lived, it's important to understand that the Chief Justice only has so much power if he has 6 other judges who want to kind of slow things down or not return the memo or say, oh, come on, Judge, come on, Tom, we don't really need to do this fast. And if the whole court doesn't go along with it, the Chief Justice can't do everything by himself, or herself, but it sure would help to have a Chief Justice who is passionately interested in racial justice and educated about it, to understand the depth of difficulty that's involved in making these societal changes. I mean, after all, we've been either a slaveholding society, a Ku Klux Klan controlling society, or a discriminatory society for most of our history, really all of our history. And those things don't change overnight, but you've got to start somewhere. And when you have a series of discrete recommendations like the ones we came up with, some of them might be harder than others, some of them might not even be that good, but do something, make some changes, don't push the whole report away. But maybe both reports could be revived and taken up to the court and say, 20 years ago, because the judges have all changed, 20 years ago, the court, had these commissions and received these recommendations. And we'd like to ask the current court to take it up again, not to appoint another commission.
Yes.
But take a look at their recommendations and say, well, look, these were commissions appointed by this court 20 years ago, and we received the recommendations, and we ought to go ahead and implement them. We ought to order them, the ones that the court can order. And to the extent that it's not really under the Supreme Court's jurisdiction, they certainly can have persuasive power over the Bar Association and court administrators and jury commissioners. They can do a lot if they're really, really passionately committed. And the way maybe to find out if they're passionately committed is to basically go to them and say, we really want you to do this. And you know what? If you don't do it, we're going to vote you out.
I love it because to me, anything that the High Supreme Court does, they've done the study and it was very exhaustive. And they said there are racial disparities throughout the state of Ohio, period. There's no more discussion. There's no longer an opinion of the individual judge. It is a fact of the court, and we have a duty to eliminate it. So therefore, everybody running for office should be answering that question to all the community groups they go to. This should be the questionnaire that they have to answer. I've brought that up for past several years to all the judges running. What are you doing to eliminate? What do you think you can be doing as a judge to eliminate racial disparities? Because when you eliminate racial disparities, you are also eliminating economic disparities, because it always improves everything for everybody else up the scale. So it's not just about racial, it's also about economic.
And I agree with what Dan said, because the voters have a lot of power. And one of the things you saw in Hamilton County in the last election was that all of the judges that touched the Tracy Hunter case at some point lost. And they lost because there was a concerted effort among some people to campaign against them. So the voters have a lot of power, but they don't have that power unless they have the knowledge and the information.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know that in the group, I don't want to be political per se, but I was involved with questioning and interviewing people running for judge, and we made that a part of their what they had to answer, what they had to respond to, is what are you going to do about that? Are you aware of this report? Do you believe it's correct? And what do you plan to do? So I think it has become, there is an increased awareness about it right now.
And I agree that we should send both reports to the current Ohio Supreme Court and ask them what they think about it. Because some of the things we talked about 20 years ago are still an issue, like you said, about using driver's licenses. We
Right.
talked about that 20 years ago. They
Yes,
still haven't done that.
exactly. Well, this is a time to insist these kinds of discussions in this type of group.
I think in the context of this group, a group like SURJ is to encourage SURJ and other organizations like that to find the right avenue to exert political power where it is necessary. And, I don't know whether SURJ ought to be the one to send a letter to the Chief Justice tomorrow with copies of these reports. I'm not sure if that's the right way to do it, but I think that the people on this call and the people that you know and SURJ and the people you come into contact in the other social justice organizations that you're involved with could give some serious consideration to the work product that in effect went into these reports.
Yes.
The level of credibility that the reports have as a result of who were on the commission and the court at the time appointing the commission, and basically saying, why isn't the court going to go ahead and do this? And if you're not going to go ahead and do it, you need to explain why. And those are the kinds of that are really, those are things that come from political action.
Exactly. And groups like the NAACP and Urban League, and we could probably assemble quite a
and the Black Lawyers Association and public defenders. But I think that the narrative and
OJC.
OJPC, absolutely. I'm not an attorney. I just play one on Black Talk Radio because I hang out with the baddest civil rights attorney in the country, and that would be the Al Gerhardt Sting. But I wanted to say to you, Judge Allen, I'm sorry, Reverend Pierce, so you're going to go next. Did I jump in front of you? So I'm notorious for breaking rules.
Iris, you can always jump in front of me. I never have a problem with that.
Thank you. I've been
I
zooming
can't wait
all
for
day.
your question or statement.
Well, I think that the narrative just needs to be adjusted a bit. We always talk about the police being the front line, the KKK, yeah, but they were cousins and children of other KKK people. And those people who were white supremacists sat on the bench. And so we often don't talk about judges in that manner, and we should, because the data started there, the practice started there, the introduction into supremacy on the bench, it started there. So people just weren't born into themselves. They had family members who believed and supported and perpetuated separatism, white supremacy. That's what we see happening on the bench. So I think we need to say it like that, because we still see those practices this day. And I think to what Celeste said about the data, if we saw the data, it probably wouldn't surprise us, but it would make us sick. Because it is an extreme racial climate. And if we were talking about any other group of people, we would be in a state of emergency to try to fix it. I'm glad you are focusing. And I think I've always tried to get the public to focus on what judges are doing on judicial conduct. I agree with that. Because there is something called a grievance. And one thing this Ohio Supreme Court does do, they investigate every grievance. None of them are shoved away. There's always an investigation. And so we do have that avenue. And I don't we only see the reports on the Black attorneys and the Black judges. We don't get to see what happens.
Yes, that's true too. That's one of the problems too.
Absolutely.
Well, that's not true, because I've had 2 white lawyers that lost their licenses for grievances that I handle.
That's you, though. So you're in the system. You're inside of it. You would see it. I'm saying for an advocate like myself, a taxpayer on multiple levels, I wouldn't see that. What I see is the disparity. Yeah. Another racist piece of paper, the fish wrap. Okay. So I'm just saying that one, that the narrative of should shift just a bit and tell the truth about judges and where they came from and who they were. And then 2, in addition to those organizations, after, listening to you, I got my hand on my head and I'm like this, we're 20 years into this work around the collaborative agreement. And so in just listening, we learn that it's just not police. It never was just about police. It was about the money first, because we wanted to sue on capitalism, but there wasn't a precedent for that. So we settled on suing the police. And just watching this work for the past 20 years, we know that it is prosecutors, it is public defenders too. And most importantly, it is judges. And so the the apathy that you see, especially from my community, is because we never see a judge held responsible unless it's a Black one. And Ernest, you may give me somebody else, but we've seen one kill somebody, another roll over somebody, another just do whatever they want, and then there's no repercussion. So this body of work here from this 1999 study, and of course I've had to indulge in it because of Al and our attorneys around the police work, is critically needed. I think it needs to be dusted off, but I think it needs to say then and now. And what is so glaring are the differences aren't that wide. It's like this. And to bring in the people who can tell you what is actually going on in these courtrooms from a racial lens, having that racial equity piece as a part of it, because none of these reforms happen if the whole damn system doesn't change. And so I like, I think, where'd he go? Hoffmeier? It said,
Yeah.
dusting it off and taking it back to the Ohio Supreme Court, but with some additional information of where we are, and including juveniles in that as well.
They are included. Juvenile courts included in that. And matter of fact, I started to say something.
And I just want to be mindful of time for all of our guests that are on the call. And I thank you so much to all of our speakers, and just want to maybe focus in on like what action items we can leave, maybe people that have to get off the call, so we can like call people in as we're like wrapping up, to make sure that you guys have a chance to reiterate like what everyone on the call can do like tonight or this week or something.
What I'm willing to do is bring the attorney groups that we work with for the racial equity lens around policing to the table.
Okay, awesome.
I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone, okay? What?
Thank you, Iris. That would be really taking it to the next level for certain.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Daniel, Mr. Did you want to just kind of crystallize like things that, they're big reports, they're over 80 pages each. But is there something that, specific perhaps to Cincinnati, to Hamilton County, we can focus on, maybe particularly, if we're bringing in attorneys in that regard, looking at racial equity lens, what 2 or 3 things, maybe from each of your perspectives, knowing these reports deeply, would be powerful foci?
Yeah. All right. Let me say this, and Ernie, you can then pipe in based on the implementation report. It seems to me that any group that's interested in the aspects of social justice that are raised by this kind of a report, this report in particular, could look through the specific recommendations and perhaps pick out some that look like they might be relatively easy to accomplish, and that the people who have the power to make those changes are local as opposed to the Supreme Court. So for example, it would be nice if it were done statewide by an order of the Supreme Court. But if some political pressure could be brought to bear on the local common pleas judges to just expanding the jury pool to include people who are notified by their driver's licenses, for example, or some of the other things that might be doable on a local level, and pick those out and say, look, if we can find some low-hanging fruit based on the specific recommendations, let's just plan to go for those over the next 6 to 12 months, and hold yourselves accountable for getting that done. That's one way you could do it. The other way would be to, and they're not mutually exclusive. The other way one could do it, and it's going to require a lot more diligence and patience and probably bringing together of political power, is really to take all of the recommendations of both reports and take them back to the Chief Justice of Ohio and to the other decision makers who have control over making the change that these recommendations call for. Yes, it would be wonderful to update all of the data, but I want to be careful not to put on ourselves or on yourselves a burden of another study that takes another 6 to 12 months when the time has come to try to make some changes. And maybe it'll be based on somewhat imperfect or outdated information. But the specific numbers may be different today, but the racial disparities are going to be apparent everywhere. Now, happily, I think there have been some positive changes. I think there have been some positive changes in who's been elected to our courts. Locally last year was to me anyway, very encouraging. And, you know, we have an African-American on the Supreme Court now. So I think there have been some improvements, and we ought to celebrate those and look at how can we leverage those improvements to make it more likely that some of the recommendations in these reports might actually be accomplished.
What do you think is some like action items or people like that SURJ can contact in making this report like known again?
Yeah.
I think you should, excuse me, Dan, I think you should just take these two reports, copy them, and send them to the Ohio Supreme Court as it's constituted now. I doubt if they've ever seen them. It's 20 years old. So send it to them. Tell them, because nothing's changed. They need to see these new judges that are up there need to see these reports.
So we could
each.
So we could
Ernie, I completely agree. And SURJ could be the organization that takes them up there. You know, it's really a political act.
So it could
Before
be
we do that,
a
I have a
simple thing to just put a cover letter to it and put all our signatures under it and say, we've been talking about this and we think it's time to act on, to take some action on this because a lot of these things aren't implemented yet.
As Irish said, people
You all
assume
hear me?
everyone knows
Hello?
everything, but everyone doesn't know everything. And we can't assume that these judges on the Ohio Supreme Court today are aware of these reports. SURJ would be a good source to send it to them.
I
Hello?
agree.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
We can hear you, Judge.
Okay, I've been trying to say that I would like to go a little bit further and recommend that the Ohio Supreme Court require that all attorneys and judges have to read this report, both reports, as part of our continuing legal education, because I've really wanted to do this anyway. This is a perfect opportunity. It should be part of what we have to do in our continuing legal education. That way, nobody's going to be surprised about what their duties are, and that is to eliminate these, because it is a legal duty as far as I'm concerned. And I think we should present it as something that all attorneys and judges have to study and read, because just giving it to the Supreme Court may not mean that it gets into the, you know, nitty gritty and down to the level of every practicing attorney in the state of Ohio.
Can you repeat like what, well, in my layman terms? So you said require every lawyer reads it?
No, require that this is part of our continuing legal education, that all attorneys and the judges are required to read this, or that it is presented as a study, a subject for which you receive legal education, and that is required. So I think that would be great for both documents to be included in that. I don't know what the new task force that Ernie did. I never even saw the report, Ernie. I didn't even know it had happened. And so I wish I had known. But if it's a kind of a compilation of what's in the original report, yeah, then one or both.
Carol, could you put the Google document up that we had the other night that has the summary of that task?
Do that. Yeah, and I put links in the chat to PDF versions of these reports so that you could paste comments to on the report, you know, sign them, and then that other folks within this group who have access to the links can also comment on your comments or other places in the report. So hopefully it's a kind of a working document as we're putting ideas together. But also I'm going to share what Claire just recommended, that we have a kind of a summary that one of our the SURJ folks has put together. And Pastor Pierce, you've been awfully quiet, so I'm just going to just make sure you get a couple minutes here. So can you jump in here?
Yeah, I just would add to the a couple of things. Number one, this conversation has been so rich. The hearing the history and what happened 20 years ago, and mirroring that to the frustration that we feel so often currently when we take one step forward and two steps back. It was that was just, I was very grateful for that conversation. Secondly, I wish Iris and Judge Nadine had that conversation between the two of them was so awesome. I wish we could have gone, let that conversation play out a little more. It really reminds me of when the way that civil rights movements happened in these conversations that spilled over and ran way too late into the night. But it's what's required to make change happen. And which leads me to my main point on this, which is we have an opportunity with this, not just to reawaken the report, which is, I think, is very vital, but to do some movement building with it and around it, that with a commitment to reach out to locally to organizations, to a handful of organizations, to share this and get some buy-in with a variety of organizations that are that have social and racial justice at the heart of their mission. And then to reach out to Columbus and Cleveland and Dayton and Akron and Toledo,
Right.
and to build that energy around the state.
Yeah.
And then if we were to spend this year to say, we're going to spend a year doing base building around this, building with organizations in Cincinnati, and then trying to expand it around the state, and spend a year building those relationships, those ties, so that next year in 2022, we move together as a group to the Supreme Court at a year that will be an election year for judges. And if I've done my electoral math right, there will be 3 judges that will be up for re-election next year, including the Chief Justice of the Ohio State Supreme Court. And so now we have an issue that's not just about bringing groups together and pushing for social justice, but now it is about, it becomes an issue that creates movement around voting for Supreme Court judges, and it becomes a voter education and a voter engagement tool as well. And that, committing to that type of timeline is how we take what is a very powerful conversation here, and I'm so glad it's been recorded. I want to go back and listen to it again, is how we take this conversation and use it to help help change what our Supreme Court looks like.
Thank you so much, Nelson. Mika's got her hand raised here.
Just to clarify, Judge Allen, in regards to the accountability of judges having to read that, is that something that the judges on the bench vote for, or is that a ORC kind of revision?
That there is a committee of the Ohio Supreme Court, which decides what should be our mandatory education. And so that group would make it we would say, we would like this to be a mandatory continuing legal education for all attorneys and judges. And I believe that would be very, very impactful. for them to understand that the racial discrimination is not an opinion, it's not a maybe, it's not an if, but it's a fact. And so from there, we have the duty to eliminate it. And then I think we can get a lot of reforms accomplished that way.
And to just to add this one thing into Pastor Pierce's point, the capacity building in that too is also starting to lobby those people. So writing letters right now to those folks that could be making those decisions.
So who are the people that would be lobbied to, I guess, would be our next kind of SURJ outlook. And I was wondering, Nadine, is there like racial discrimination like already CLEs, or is there like nothing?
We already offer some fairness, but it's kind of wishy-washy, and it's not really not wishy-washy. It's fine, but it does not. It's not saying we all have to read this document. It's independent from what's in this document, and I've been saying we all need to know and read and have to study this document itself as a primary class.
We already have the structure that would make that easy. We have a rule now that requires that we get, in addition to continuing legal education, about the rules of professional conduct. I know the judges have a parallel one. We have a rule of professionalism, a code of professionalism that our continuing legal education specifically requires that we read. And this could simply be added to that. That it requires that every lawyer every 2 years has to read this report.
Yeah, and I'm one of the I was an instructor. I kind of stepped away from it, but I think I could approach our Supreme Court personnel about making this one of the classes. So I would be willing to do that, but I would like to have you mentioned. I agree with Nelson. I think we need to have a statewide kind of effort, not just coming out of Cincinnati,
yes,
but all these other groups. And I think, Carol, you're in touch with so many different types of groups that evolve around questions of racial justice and fundamental fairness.
Well, you have the NAACP on here twice. So I know David's on here, and then
yes,
and I serve as legal redress and public safety chair. I don't know how that happened, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's an organization that has structure throughout the state, it is that. It is
definitely.
So
definitely.
I
and there's
love
so many
your
other
idea.
ones too.
I love your idea, Nelson, around taking some time, because oftentimes we do rush it. I would like to reread to see if and I know that it does. I'm not disparaging anybody's work, but to make sure that the details matches the headlines of today. And if not, we can supplement that with what we believe should be of the day. And
interesting.
Add while we've been doing this, and I'm quite sure all of the cities, at least the big ones in Ohio, can talk about trying to reform one part of this criminal justice system without all of the others following, and what impact that has. And so I would like to supplement that with just something from the Black United Front on the work that we've done and why it is important that we have this work coming to fruition.
I would definitely love like all of this collaboration with all of this representation of different organizations too. And then like Daniel had said about, not trying to spend too much time about like revising, but maybe like Iris, you said about having, making sure it's still relevant, which I'm sure.
But, details match the headlines of 2021.
Yeah,
yes,
like supplement with maybe like further, maybe if we can't get into like details, like rewriting it, but like supplementing like areas that need to be addressed like in more of a broader sense, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think that might be helpful if all of us on this committee actually read this 81, because once you start reading it, it is so interesting and well done and entertaining in the sense that it's dynamic, that we really need to understand the philosophy of each section, because they broke down the entire legal system and have the reasoning, and then they give their statistics, and then they have the recommendations. So why don't we all start with reading it ourselves so we can have a better idea how we can implement it. Definitely about police conduct and behavior, and what do we do about outside to me, the employers of the police are the city council members and the governors and the county commissioners who hire them. They're the employers, and we have to make them feel responsible for what their police departments are doing, for example. Right, Iris?
Yeah, that too. But guess what else? I'm the boss as well, because I'm the taxpayer. So
absolutely, we are
I need to be included in that ownership and responsibility of holding everybody accountable and
that's
making
my point.
sure. Yes,
that's my point, is that we're talking to their employer, who are elected officials, and because we don't hire the cops and we can't fire them per se, but they can. And so I agree with what you're saying. I just said it differently.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Judge.
We linked to that that Google Doc that we have on the commission, and we'd love for you guys to add your insights on all of these things, and talk more when we're all a little more enlightened on the
when we all
pages.
read. It's fundamental.
On that point, it took me a while to read all 80 pages of the first report, and then almost 80 pages of the second one. And so if you want to get the 5-minute summary version, that's in that link that Carol put on at 9:13 or whatever. And if some of you who have a mouse and aren't on an iPhone or whatever, if you right click on the chat, you can actually save all the comments at once tonight, and then put it on your own document and read them at your leisure. But that Google Doc is Maria, who's a member of our steering committee. She created that really nice summary. It'll give you the overall sweep of the whole thing in about 5 minutes.
And one thing we may want to do is kind of identify a chunk that everybody could read that chunk and come back and say, let's, juries, for example, was mentioned. That would be one way. And kind of, whether it's, Black United Front or SURJ or Together, or keep a light on chunk by chunk, break it down. I'd love to put together we've kind of, amateur night SURJ had put together kind of a study on it, but how do we okay.
I agree with you, Ernest. I agree with you. Reading is fundamental. If we want to know the spirit and what the true word is, read it.
Read the whole thing. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to shortchange the idea of reading the whole reports. I highly recommend that. But I'm just saying, if you want to springboard your own appetite for it and get your interest whetted in reading them, I'll just start with the summary, and then you'll go in from there.
And also the summary is a working document. Let's make it a working document where let's edit it. Because other people maybe are not going to go as deep as we're going to, but we want to be able to give them the highlights. Maybe there's too much in there, maybe there's too little in there. Or maybe, like I said, we can kind of zero in on a particular aspect of it.
Who's going to contact the other groups in Ohio? The NAACPs or the other SURJ groups that might want to jump on this as well with us?
Well, I think we're going to start locally here. I think Nelson's plan for starting locally is a valuable one, and I think Molly's in the group already because she's here from Cleveland. She wants to join in. I'm sure that's fine, but we want to kind of just build what we know and what we each know about it. I think from what Nelson, you want to lead on that? How would you want to?
Yeah, I think if we start with building a coalition here around this, and that way, as we begin to spread the conversations to other cities, it isn't just SURJ that's doing it.
No.
But it's a coalition of people who've come together, who are reaching out to, SURJ you're reaching out to your SURJ partners while the NAACP is reaching out to their partners.
Exactly.
And so we're already seeding a coalition in other places through the partners that are working collaboratively here.
It makes sense, Nelson.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks for that comment.
I think, Carol, I think if we give ourselves at least a week or two to read it and then come back together.
We need part 2, don't we?
Oh, part 2, 3,
Part
4,
3 or
5.
4.
Yeah, so if, yeah, what Carol said, to just type in the chat if you feel like you can commit to reading and discussing, and those links are commentable, so we can comment on there as well.
And David, you had your hand up, and I assume that was an affirmation, but perhaps you also want to put some voice in here?
Well, it actually was affirmation, but I will say that I sit on a couple of organizations that are statewide, and I have connections in each of the pockets through the Ohio Unity Coalition, as well as the Prince Hall Masons of Ohio, where I sit as the voter awareness chair. So I have contacts in each of the major cities in regards to getting things in play for this, but I don't want to do anything until I've read it and then came back to this group and understood what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, this has been great dialogue tonight, but until I read the document and I understand it, I don't want to bring it to anyone else.
Yeah, awesome. And so
Daniel and Mr. McAdams, are you all interested in staying with us on this? That wasn't what you signed up for initially, but we'd sure love to have you back.
I tell you what, I have devoured these reports and I love talking about them. So yes, I'll come back. Nadine
Excellent.
talking.
like
I said, it's my secular Bible.
I like talking about them also, and I have to go, but if you have any other questions or you want me to talk about it some more, I'd be glad to.
We'll invite you back.
So Judge and Ernest, look out for me, because all I do is sit at the table with attorneys, and so I am going to bring this forth in the next couple of days. So
certainly the Black Lawyers Association, that's a whole other avenue right there. In fact, there's also forming a new association of Ohio Black judges, because we've determined that actually we may have to be the conscience for the state of Ohio, and I'm saying we should be leading on issues around eliminating racial disparities. So
I think so.
Very good.
So,
yeah,
I'm happy to
because it's not, you know.
I'm happy to stay involved to a limited extent. I'm actually involved in 2 other pretty substantial Black-white activities right now.
Right.
And I was on one Zoom today, and I've got another one. But you know, my whole life I've been passionately committed to these issues. So I'm not going to. And if I can be helpful to you in reviving this report, I'd be happy to do it. I don't recall at the time, 20 years ago, how it was circulated. I mean, it really was. It was really a report that was submitted to the court. We really weren't supposed to send it around, for example, to the ACLU and the NAACP, Urban League, and Bar Association presidents. We really weren't supposed to do that. They might have gotten a hold of it, or maybe later on we sent it around, but it never became the basis for any kind of political activity. And what you're talking about is using it as a basis for political activity. And I think that's terrific.
Yes. I wanted to say that's why I didn't make it, because it was kept in the
I think Chief Justice Tom Moyer died within a year or two of submitting the report. And when he died, the report died.
I don't even know how I got hold of it. There might have been a little blurb somewhere, and I just got hold of this report and wondered for many years is why is this thing such a on the shelf somewhere collecting dust? It's a live, living, breathing machine that we can utilize. So I'm all in on that.
Just April's got her hand raised, and Karen Montagno was talking about I'm also, Karen and I are both on the MARC board here in Cincinnati.
All that.
I think we're a little bit premature right now as far as bringing folks in from that direction, but that would definitely be one of the inner circles in Cincinnati, not this circle, but the next circle out to get involved in it too. April, you got a quick
Tremendous.
question here or comment?
Yeah, just a comment that I recognize that these are tangents, but I do feel it's important to anchor everyone's efforts here, as has been referenced by others in history. Just read and highly recommend the book, The Kidnappers Club, which is about Tammany Hall and all of the judicial, kind of extrajudicial efforts around fugitive slave law and the errors of the time in New York City around kidnapping accusations and fugitive slave acts.
Yeah.
That were abhorrent for a 40-year time period. And it's academic piece, The Kidnappers Club. I highly recommend
April, if you want to put that in the chat, if you put the title in the chat, that would be really helpful.
And not to belabor it, but the point to me as I read it is that in my soul, I absolutely felt these parallels to now. And so I feel that it's important to understand the layers that are built in the institutions and to recognize the depth and the breadth of that damage, and then look at what we continue to erroneously support now. And then the other piece,
April, I need to cut you off. April, it's after 8:40. I need to cut you off. I'm sorry. So guys, we need to pick a date. You know, the Wednesday at 8 we've used, there's the 24th, there's the 3rd, or if there's another time that's better for key players here, I'm open to it.
Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm good. After 5:30.
24th or the 3rd or the 3rd. I don't know. I'm kind of a slow reader, but I will try my best.
I'm pushing for the 3rd. How about February 3rd? That's 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You mean March? You mean March
yeah.
3rd?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes, March.
March 3rd at same time.
All right, we got that. March 3rd.
And how about we try and allot for a little bit more time, just or
Yeah,
something.
a lot less introduction.
Yes.
This is important. And
we'll make sure everyone talks.
And we'll be getting out some notifications. Everybody registered and gave us their emails when we started this. And definitely hope everybody can join us again 3 weeks from today. Same time, same band channel, that whole thing.
Thank you.
And Iris, maybe you've got somebody on Black United Front who can help me do the Zoom thing. I mean, I think it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, you need one of the leaders. And
Yes,
also,
please.
you know, I need to ask this question though of this group of people. I believe in reciprocity. So don't ask me for something that I can't ask you.
Please.
And as I said earlier, this is the 20th year for the collaborative and for the Black United Front and our supporters. We have not left the table. We don't have a budget. We don't have all the things that police and cities do, but we are still working very hard. We just were able to penetrate the FOP union contract, and no other Black-led organization was able to do that. We got some things that thank you so very much, but there is still some very low-hanging fruit with priorities attached to them that we are pushing through City Hall, starting in last June. And so if we need your assistance, I will make sure that Carol knows and she can send it out to this group.
Absolutely. And if you've got a link or something, if you're looking also for donations or something to support the group, you know, if you want to put something in the chat or pass it on to me, I'll pass it out to the group.
All right, let's just end it. As the judge said, it's time to fight back with truth and power.
Amen. Thank you all so very much. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe in the snow and this kind of crazy world we're in. But so good.
Thanks to everybody. Very, very encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stopping the recording now.